I now have the pleasure of introducing our next segment, and you'll be all very excited to know that you are the first people to hear about the new blueprint for business leadership on the SDGs. With the SDGs, we're all in agreement on where the world needs to go. And fulfilling these ambitions will, however, take an unprecedented effort by all sectors in society. And business, of course, has to play a very important role in the process. It will require true leadership, and Global Compact's new blueprint for business leadership on the SDGs is a tool that is designed to help us get there. It will inspire and help companies across all geographies and sectors to set high ambitions and deliver real impact for the SDGs. To get us started on this part, I'd like to now invite my fellow speakers to join me up on stage. If I could request Kamal Meattle, CEO of Paharpur Business Center, Nisha Agrawal, Chief Executive Officer of Oxfam India, Klaus Stig Pedersen, 2016 SDG Pioneer, and the Head of Corporate Sustainability Affairs at Novozymes, and Lila Karbassi, Chief of Programs at the UN Global Compact, to please come up on stage. I'll begin with Lila. Welcome. Please be seated. Please be seated. I'll begin with Lila, who with me will converse with the panelists. Lila and her team, ladies and gentlemen, have been working very hard on the blueprint, and they continue to do so and add to it as we speak. And we're really happy that all of you will be able to contribute to the making of the blueprint. She will share her learnings as well as help us understand from our panelists their strategies. Let me also, at this point, encourage you, those of you who have questions, to please write down your questions or use the hashtag Global Goals Local Business and tweet them to us. And depending on the time available, I will try and engage with as many queries as possible. So it's over to Lila now. If you could all just give her a big round of encouragement by giving her a round of applause. She's really worked very hard to share with us the blueprint today. Lila?
Thank you, Rini, and good afternoon, everyone. We are very pleased that the Sustainable Development Goals are gaining traction. In the current context in which we live, with growing inequalities, instability, the threat of climate change, environmental risks, our world needs a plan. The good news is that we have a plan. And this plan is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It's actually the only plan that we have. It's a plan that is universal and inclusive. It transcends borders, and it applies to every person on the planet. And now, nearly 2 years after this agenda has been adopted by all the nations, in the context of all the challenges that we're facing, this agenda is taking on a whole new meaning, and now, more than ever before, we need to get it right. At the Global Compact, we gathered our close partners to develop a blueprint for all those who aspire to be champion of the 2030 Agenda. This blueprint will be released at our Leaders Summit in September, and it will set expectations for what constitutes leadership from a business practice on each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Today, I'm pleased to share 3 first elements about the blueprint, which you can also find in your apps looking at the entire document. First, businesses that thoroughly and consistently apply the 10 principles of the Global Compact make a direct and substantial contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. By this, we mean that the fundamental rights that are outlined in the 10 principles of the Global Compact, human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, these rights are at the core of the 2030 Agenda. More specifically, we're talking about the right to quality education, to housing, to food, to water, equal access to employment, And these economic and social rights are exemplified in each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Second element, the SDGs call for a principled prioritization of impact that takes account of the local context. So what does this mean? This means that companies are invited to prioritize their actions on the SDGs and select entry points. These entry points are based on a careful and continuous assessment of the company's both greatest risks on the people and the planet and the greatest opportunity for positive impact. The SDGs are all highly interconnected. Action on selected entry points will then expand and impact all of the SDGs throughout the agenda. Third element, we're offering today 5 what we call leadership qualities that, when applied, will set your company's SDG approach apart and help you differentiate. These are intentional, ambitious, consistent, collaborative, and accountable. Any company, no matter their size, no matter where they are, no matter where they stand on their sustainability journey, can apply these leadership qualities and set themselves apart as business leaders on that agenda. In the next couple of months, we will use these qualities and we will put forward expectations for what constitutes leadership on each of the 17 goals, and we invite you all to participate. In conclusion, we feel that the 2030 Agenda is our greatest opportunity to put our world on a path that is more equitable and more balanced. It will take courage, it will take conviction, and all of you in the room have already indicated that it will be possible to make these goals a reality. So together with all our local networks around the world, we look forward to supporting you in all of these efforts so that we can make the global goals local business. Now, in the next segment, Rini and I would like to turn to our panel and get your views and insights on the blueprint, on the leadership qualities. And the first question goes to Mr. Kamal Meattle. You are the CEO of Paharpur Business Center, and through your work, you have shown that it's possible for built-in environment to improve productivity and wellness at affordable cost. The question for you is, how do you define leadership practice on the SDGs, and how do these 5 qualities resonate with your work?
Well, let me ask everybody here a question. Would you like to do better this year than what you did last year? Who are the people here who do not wish to do better this year than they did last year? Is there anybody here? So the question is, whether you're a pauper or you're a millionaire, you wish to do better than what you did before. And in India, we have 300 million people who have not seen electricity. So obviously, they need to see electricity. They need to do better. So how do we get there? How do we make sure that our life is sustainable and our existence is sustainable? At the same time, we are able to improve the life of everyone. Whether you are a millionaire or a pauper, it doesn't matter. And it is to serve everybody. I think Ambassador Puri mentioned Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas as the Prime Minister's slogan, and which means that we must all do better together. And it makes sense. In fact, it was as early as 54 years ago when President Kennedy went and relating to his experience in terms of the missile mishap, said, for in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. The question is, how do we make sure that this happens? And as far as we are concerned, we find that the SDGs provide a platform, a methodology for following and making sure that you are at least contributing to something everywhere. In fact, in our own company, we find that we contribute a little bit to all the various 17 items, a little bit more, a little bit less someplace. A little bit less perhaps in 14, which talks about oceans. It is about climate change and related to oceans, which we engage with. And as far as environment is concerned, the goal 13 is concerned, we are very intensive on that one. And we have found in our own organization that once you are clear about your objectives and goals, it motivates everybody else. It's not only money which they look for. They look for some common cause and something which gives them satisfaction, something where they feel good when they hand over a business card of theirs and the company's name, which is associated with good life, happiness in terms of good things rather than only making money as such. So it is a connection which is important, and that is what we have practiced. And we are a company which provides infrastructure to various people to set up their offices in India. And we've had very large number of companies start up their operations in India with us. And what we looked at was, given the fact that pollution was a very large issue in mid-90s, and I myself became allergic to Delhi's air, I found, instead of leaving Delhi, which my doctors told me, I said, let me try and change it. Let me try and change the environment. So the thought process was, which the minister mentioned, that in Indian heritage, we knew that trees and plants were a great thing and we would not cut them, etc. So the question was, why did Lord Buddha sit under the peepal tree and not under some other tree? Why is there a basil plant in every home? And let's start with these plants. And we learned that NASA was doing some work, and we also found that we could also grow our own fresh air. Today, I had a count done on the number of plants in our building. There are about 7,500 indoor plants. And the CO2 levels inside the building are about 5% lower than what you find outside on the ambient readings. And the VOCs are generally less than 50 microgram per meter cube, but not exceeding 200 microgram per meter cube. And similarly, the PM 2.5s are generally 1, 2, 3, definitely under 15. Now, we found that there was a probability of 42% that your blood oxygen levels would go up in the building when you stayed in the building for about 8 to 10 hours. But what has happened recently is Harvard, as well as University of California, Berkeley, have published a study which shows that for people who use information, their cognitive abilities can go up by 299%. So the question is, if your productivity increases, your wellness or health improves, and your cognitive ability also goes up in a built environment, why is it that it is not being repeated in every single building in Delhi or in India or wherever it is? We are a 35-year-old building and a retrofit USGBC LEED Platinum and BE 5-star building. Now the question would be, you may ask, you do this, perhaps you do it for ego satisfaction or you just want to do it, that's why you're doing it. But let me say this, that we have actually reduced our cost. Our cost or the energy consumption in our building is less than 20 watt hours per square meter per hour. So here's a number. And the general number, which most buildings have, is close to 3 times. So our electricity bill is just about 1/3 normal. And we follow international standards. We follow ASHRAE standards. We follow LEED Platinum standards. And that is, for example, ASHRAE says 24 degrees plus minus 2. We do not think it is right to have air at 18 or 20 degrees and then wear insulation on top, wear a jacket and so on and so forth on top to keep yourself warm. We feel that you should have open collars, half-sleeve shirts, and why wear insulation. So at 25 degrees plus minus 1, you're very comfortable, and you enjoy that. So there are small, small things which all add up. And I think in businesses, we have experienced that if we follow all the various SDGs, I call them now accepted SDGs, which the world now recognizes, I think it's a great way of moving forward or measuring yourself and saying, are you doing 10%, 20%, 50%, 100% of what you do? And I do believe that it is necessary for all of us to contribute. It is not looking at the government and saying the government is going to do it.
Right.
And as far as what we do in terms of following the principles, I think we concentrate on ambition, and the second one is collaboration. Ambition in the sense that we would like to follow all the international standards and not make our own standards, and B, in terms of collaboration, get involved with all the stakeholders and try and leverage our position with the world. In other words, let me ask you this. If you were to give away everything which you own today, right in this room, what change would you bring in the world? Chances are not that much, even if Mr. Gates was present in the audience, not that much. However, if you leverage the powers that be, the governments that be, and leverage them with an idea and have them accept that idea, they can move. When the elephant decides to move, it really moves.
Right.
And I think that is important.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Meattle, for all those inputs. I'd like to now just move to Nisha. I believe Oxfam has come out with a report recently, which is called Raising the Bar, Rethinking the Role of Business in Sustainable Development Goals. For companies that are aspiring to be a front runner on the SDGs, what do you think is required for them to go beyond their opportunities to increase profits? Nisha?
Thank you so much. So I just want to start by thanking everybody for including Oxfam, and I think I'll speak on behalf of Oxfam, but also as a member of civil society. So these goals are really, really exciting because they are so ambitious, because they are so transformative. And what you then need to see is also business that is not doing business as usual, right? We started with a very moving introduction to the seminar, which was about a 5-year-old getting gang raped. That is the reality of the developing world where we are living in, where businesses are looking to see them as their big markets. So one of the things that is very transformational about the SDGs as compared to the MDGs, for example, is the goal on gender. It goes way beyond saying we just need to get little girls into school. It actually talks about ending violence against women. We know that 1 out of 3 women suffer from violence within their own homes, globally, in every single country that is sitting here. This is not just an Indian story, this is everywhere in the world. So that's the kind of aspiration the SDGs are saying. Number 2, on inequality, goal number 10. We never had a goal on inequality in the MDGs. We do have a goal now because everybody recognizes that the systems that are delivering only for the top 1% have something to do with the bottom 40%. We can't say leave nobody behind if you don't see the connection of a system where even in the US, for example, in the last 30 years, the income of the top 1% has gone up by 300%, and of the bottom 50% has gone up by 0, right? So inequality is something very, very new. Bringing in climate change into the agenda and saying we need to develop in a way right from the beginning where we too are the same, and that it's not let's develop first and we'll clean up the air later. That now we have to think about how we actually produce that air and what kind of world we want to. So bringing in the sustainability agenda. And fourthly, what is very, very new is in the partnership goal, goal 17, to recognize that governments alone will not be able to do it. Yes, it's true that the bulk of the money, if you like, or their power even in making laws, etc., is large. But the private sector is not playing a very small role, even in the 3 things that I just talked about, in creating a more unequal world, in creating a more unsustainable world, in creating a more gender unequal world. The private sector is playing a very big role. So can we turn that power around to really make them part of the solution rather than part of the problem? And I think this goal 17, where we all sit in the same room and think together of how to actually use that power for the good of the world, is something new. So what do we want? We want leaders that can think beyond business as usual, that they can think big, they can think about the future. And in the case of business, what would it mean to think beyond profits? Number one, it's thinking beyond your very own company. So we had a session this morning where we were saying, we think at the very least, the direct impact of companies goes through the whole supply chain. Because for many companies, what happens in your own office is the least of it. It's women who are working in their homes that are producing the garments that you're selling in global market. And if you look at large labor-intensive industries, whether it's electronics or footwear or toys and so on, the supply chain is what matters. So that has to be part of your thinking of whatever you're doing for yourself. All those policies have to apply there. And I wouldn't stop there. I would say those supply chains are not located nowhere. They're located in some communities. So how big can you think? Is it your company? No. Is it your supply chain? No. It's at least the community. And then these goals are saying, actually, let's not stop there. It's your country and it's also this planet. We're all in this together. So really saying, I am responsible not just for my company, but for the planet. So number one, going beyond the company. Number two, going beyond compliance. We did a study on, what do companies think how do they think about risk? And are they really looking at risks in a big way? And to our surprise, at the World Economic Forum, when the same companies go, for 3 years in a row in Davos, they say the rising global inequality is one of the biggest risks that they're seeing, because they know if all the money gets concentrated in the hands of the few, they have no consumers to buy the goods they're producing. And yet, when we did a study in India, the only risk they're seeing is of compliance. Are we complying with the laws of the land? That is a very minimal thing. That you have to go beyond compliance to be thinking about bigger things. The compliance is just understood that you're all complying with the law. In India, because this conference is happening here, I have to say going beyond CSR. Again, people talked about CSR. That is not what we are talking about, how you spend 2%. That is where I would agree with you to say it's nothing. It's a tiny bit of money, even though it adds up to a lot of dollars. But it's how you earn your 100% that is going to have the impact on the planet and on communities, and not what you do with 2%. And I wish it had never happened, actually, and it'll be surprising for you to hear that from a civil society member, because it's just become such a distraction in India, because the minute we start talking about responsible business, companies that are mining badly, for example, will stand up and say, I built 2 schools. So that's not what it's about. And finally, we have to go beyond, the quarter by quarter. That short-termism is not going to get us to this kind of a world 15 years from now that is sustainable, that is equal, that is just. We're talking about justice, we're talking about harmony, we're talking about lack of conflict. If all we do is focus on how much profits are we going to give to our shareholders, the shareholders are just one stakeholder, maybe an important one, but not the most important one. Not if you believe in the SDGs. And this is one of the numbers we put out in the inequality report, that in the last few decades, the share of profits that are being distributed to shareholders has gone up from 10% to 70%. Why not use that money for doing good for communities, for workers, for improving so many of your other stakeholders' lives, rather than giving it back to people who already own wealth? And so just concentrating it more and more. So these are 4 very different ways. I think companies, leaders that really are transformational. When we use the word leader, what does it mean? That our eyes are set to some glorious distant future. We are painting that vision every day when we speak. We talk about values, and we are able to create hope and optimism and get everybody marching behind us. And so that kind of leadership is the only thing that will deliver on the SDGs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nisha. Would you like to?
Thank you, Nisha. And I have follow-up questions to you. But first, we can go to Klaus. Klaus, you've been one of the SDG pioneers for 2016, and you've been recognized already for all the leading actions that you've taken within Novozymes on the SDGs. We would love to hear from you what your approach has been and how within Novozymes you have been able to prioritize your actions on that very broad agenda with 17 goals, 169 targets.
Yeah. Thank you, Lila, for those great questions that I'm happy to respond to. And thank you to the UN Global Compact for recognizing my work on the sustainability agenda as an SDG pioneer. It actually started for me 25 years ago here in India. I had long hair and I traveled around here in India to find my purpose in life. And I saw people suffering, I saw environment being destroyed, and I got very upset. And I decided my purpose in life was to make the world a better place. And the most powerful tool I could see was business. And that has been my journey ever since, to find a way that business can be a force for good, to find a way where business can make the difference we need to see in the world for everybody's benefit. And that is what I've been doing ever since. And for the past 10 years, I've been in Novozymes leading that journey. And prioritizing is always difficult, and it's very difficult for Novozymes because there's so many opportunities for our company to contribute to the SDGs. Let me share with you very briefly what we do. We are the world's largest in industrial enzymes and microbes. That means that we find nature's solutions, enzymes and microbes, and then we look at industries and say, where can an enzyme or a microbe be used instead of water, instead of energy, instead of chemistry? Where can it help create a better working environment, or where can it help create jobs in rural areas? So sustainable solutions or improvements of technologies, improvement of products is our business. Our customers is Unilever, Procter & Gamble, it's Nike, it's IKEA, a lot of the consumer product manufacturers, and the value we bring to them is basically to help them improve what they do on a daily basis. So we have been using life cycle assessments as a tool to understand our impact for many years in the company. And when we got the SDG framework, we immediately jumped onto that and started to analyze how is it that our technologies, how is it that our solutions contribute to the SDGs. And then we could see that almost all of them has big impacts to many of the SDGs. So our question was more, how can we create the biggest impact, and how can we accelerate that in the years to come? So what we did was, based on this life cycle assessment experience, we broke down the 17 goals and the 169 sub-targets into areas where we could quantify the impact, into areas where we only had information to qualify the impact, and then areas where we could see that enzymes was not really making a difference, for example, on equality among states. That would be far-fetched to say enzymes and microbes play a role there, but a lot of other areas we could definitely see the link between our solutions, innovations, and the SDGs. And with that tool, we have scanned our innovation pipeline. We have identified the big contributors, the big impacts, where could they come from? And currently we focus on big CO2 saving opportunities, big food improvement opportunities, and big water saving opportunities. And we are now making plans for accelerating those innovations to make even better offerings or even bigger impacts in the markets. And as part of this journey using the SDGs, we are now reaching out to the world, looking for new partners that can work with us to accelerate those innovations, because we truly believe when we have such a great offering from our technology, there must be new partners out there that wants to work with us to accelerate those innovations, accelerate those solutions for the market and for the world. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Klaus. Well, there's a lot of work that is being done and a lot of companies that have taken the initiatives, but these are early days, and so I have a question for you, Lila, as the concluding part of this journey. This is all very exciting, and there is definitely, a lot of innovation that is coming forward, but they're early days. You have a lot of work ahead of you. What do you think, and this goes out to the companies and businesses that join us today, what do you think are the steps that are the next steps now to help you in build that blueprint for us? So what is next? You are wired, so you can speak.
Okay, wonderful. So first, I also wanted to come back to one of the points that Nisha made very briefly and recommend to all the companies of goodwill that are interested in increasing their performance on the SDGs to look at the report Raising the Bar, because they're very interesting guidance points in that report in terms of not falling into the trap of cherry picking your actions on certain areas and in the meantime not addressing some of the fundamental challenges or some of the fundamental risks that companies are facing. So I would recommend for everyone to look at that report carefully. In terms of the blueprint, we are now embarking on the second phase of the development of the blueprint. We will hold very concretely monthly calls with all those of you who would be interested in joining our local networks, the companies, the governments participating here, so that in the next couple of months we would be able to define collectively what is an acceptable standard or practice that can be put forward as leadership practice by business, and doing that on each of the 17 SDGs. We're very excited about the work. We will also make sure that this work resonates well with the rest of the portfolio of our action platforms. As you have seen, we have launched 9 action platforms, and in particular that it's very much in sync with the action platform on reporting on the SDGs. So these are the next steps. The project would be finalized by September, and the material would be released at our Leaders Summit.
And of course, you will be available between today and tomorrow for those who would like to network with you and add their points to it, and as would our panelists. So really, we're coming to a close to this part of the program. Thank you so much to our panelists who are on stage and to the audience who's out there. I don't know if there were any questions from Twitter. There are. Perhaps we can take them up now if there are anything significant. Otherwise, we move on to the next, because we're really short of time. So, Colleen, would you come up and just quickly address, is this specific to anybody?
So this is a question for...
Would you use the microphone there? Yeah.
So this is a question specific to India. So the question is, how can we aim for sustainable development while preserving the eco-balance in forest-covered mining areas in India?
Okay, so Nisha, would you like to take that on? But very, very briefly, please. Yeah.
So I think that's a very easy one. There really isn't much of a trade-off. The poorest states of India, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and southern Orissa, also have the poorest communities there, tribal communities, also have the forest cover there, and also under the land have mining. And I think we know enough on sustainable mining. We know that communities should be consulted, and in India we have a law that says that the land and the mines actually belong to the communities. So free, prior, informed consent, which not many companies in India have picked that up as a principle, to talk to the communities, ask them if they would like their forests, which is where they derive their livelihoods, to be converted into mines. Probably they would say yes if they could see some benefit from the mining coming back to them. So when India came up with a new mining law, there were a lot of suggestions that some percentage of the profits from the mining companies should go back to those communities. That didn't come out in the law, but there are some funds being set up. So doing sustainable mining, I think companies in the West have learned it the hard way. We are still struggling with it very much in India, but there are ways of doing this. But there really is a one-to-one mapping between mining, forests, and the poorest people of India, whose rights must be protected when we decide to mine.
Right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to a close to that session. So just as Lila said, this is really early days. You are all invited to take part in the consultations, not just in the breakout sessions later today, but also part of the online consultations taking place from now until the end of summer in the lead up to the big event, as Lila mentioned, in New York in September. So as our speakers take their exit off stage, we've really heard a clear call for leadership today. And I'm sure you're as excited as I am to take a closer look at what this looks like in India.